So as we are creating the cluster every time, right? Every time we have to create the instance and install all this. Let me show you a way how we can just templatize this, create the configurations file, and in one click we can create and launch our cluster, right? So what I'll do here, I'm going to create the template. Now let's select the EC2 sections, launch template, go here, just give the name, and here template version description, just give a descriptions, right? I can just give like minikube cluster, something like this. Or now what I can do here, tag is not that much important. Source template, if you have already a template available, you can source it. As I don't have any templates available, and I don't want to do that. So let's go ahead, and here you have to select the operating systems, right? Suppose I'll search for Ubuntu. Sorry, you have to just go browse more AMI. Let's select the Ubuntu version here. Select. Okay, so image Ubuntu is selected. Now the instance type. So it's up to you whether you want to include in the template or not. So here it is asking, don't include in launch template. If you don't want to include in the launch template, you can select it. Why we don't need actually to add in the launch template? Because whenever you execute the launch template, if you already have added that one, that will be your default instance type. Every time you just click on it, will use the default whatever you have selected. But in your company, what happens whenever you select, sometimes you need to change it, right? Dynamically, you need to change it. So you can, that time you have to give, don't include any launch template. So instance type will not be added. Now, what you need to do? Select it. For our case, let it be static. So I'll use T2 medium. Now what I can do here, the key pair, add the key pair as well. So everything will be in the template. Network, so create security group. What is this? Anyway, don't include it. Create, so not create. Select existing security group. I have already one. Let me select that one. Okay. EBS volume, the storage, right? It is 8 GB, the free tier. Let me make it to 30 GB because I need more storage in order to run the Kubernetes cluster, right? 30 GB, and that's all. And in the advanced section, we have to provide in the user data sections here, we have to provide the commands, what needs to be executed, right? So let me just copy paste those commands. First things, as we need that to be updated, right? So let's do that. Before that, you have to write the shell script. That's hope most of you have little ideas on the shell scripting, right? Sudo next install Docker, then download this particular file, right? Minikube executables. Let's copy, same thing, whatever, right? Let's rename it, right? Next, what we can do, install the kubectl. So here also we are going to download the same command kubectl. The version thing is not required to display. Let's go ahead, kubectl. It's very simple, guys. Okay, so these are the commands which will be executed. So after that, we need this user mode. I think it will work or not. I'm not sure. Let it be added. Let's minikube start. So I'm not sure whether it will start. I've never done it. We have done other things, right? In our templates, we have done installing softwares and copying the files, everything we have done. But the minikube cluster, that the first time I'm just adding in the template. Let's see if it is starting perfectly or not. If not, we'll do it manually. No worries. Let's go ahead and click on the create launch template. So what it will do? So when we run the template, right? So based on the user data sections, whatever is given, it will execute during the launch instance. So once the launch instance is launched, during that time, what happened? These commands will be executed. So what will do? It will install all these things, right? Better not to give update. It's not required. Let's go ahead and create launch template. So now our template is created. If I just go here, view launch template. So what is the beneficial here? See, if you want to modify the template, every time you modify the template, what will happen? It will create a new version. Currently, the default version is 1, latest version also 1. So what happens? In companies, in the real time, what we work, we create the templates for our different purposes, right? So each template, when we need to modify it, right? We'll create a new version. It will create a new version. So why we need, suppose a template, whatever version, suppose you have 4 versions and you have used for some purpose, some for from applications, and you modified and added something else for different purpose, and that will create a new versions, right? So you can use that particular version for different applications to run. So your versions, based on your requirement, you have to choose the version and launch the template. Okay, now our template is created. Let's go ahead and launch the instance using the template. So how we'll do that? So you can just select launch here, launch instance, right? You can see here launch instance and launch instance from template. 2 ways you can do that. Okay, select it here. We have launch instance from template. Select this one, select the template. See, we have the KTS. Select. Now it will ask for the version. Which version do you want to select it? As we have only single version, right? Latest version is 1. So automatically it will come. Just give few seconds. It's loading. So based on the versions available with this template, see, default is 1. We don't have anything, right? Only one default version is there. Let it be there. Now, what we can do, based on the template, you can see here, we did not select anything, just gave the select the template, that's all. Based on the template, it automatically took all these things. See, it automatically took all these things. I did not select it, right? Selected the template and just go ahead, launch instance. Now the instance is getting launched. So here, it's pending. It will take time to get ready. Okay, because we have lots of commands we have given, and cluster, it will take time to do that. If everything goes well, it will otherwise it will not install the minikube. Just hold on for few minutes, at least 1 minute or Okay, so the status check is passed. Let's log into this server and check whether the mini queue was installed or not. Okay. Good. So I connected to the server. Let's see. What I can do if I just check system switcher status docker. Okay. So it is not installed. Okay, it is not installed. There could be some issues. Initially itself, it's not installed. That's fine. I'll just quick. That is how you have to just do it. Okay, as I showed you, and that you have to just modify those commands. Whatever there could be definitely mistakes there in the commands which is not executed. That's why it's not installed properly. Okay, it's not installed. Now if I let me just quickly go ahead and do it manually, and then we have to do practice. Every time we have to do this one, otherwise we cannot keep it right for a long time. It will charge. And it will take just another 1 week to complete the Kubernetes, so don't worry. We'll just quickly do that. Okay. What else we can do this, guys? So I every time what I did, I just copy pasted from a document and then installed everything, right? Apart from that, what else I can do? These are the real time things you need to understand. Automations. So I kept here. Don't think about this launch template and AWS wise. Normal automations, if you want to do, what you can do.
Terraform.
Yes, that is the tool you have to use. Apart from that, if you don't have to use the tool, how you can do that?
Shell script.
Exactly. So you can write shell script or Python or whatever script you know, you can do that. So that is the basic fundamentals. That is the automations, basic whatever the automations you want. So the tools is the tool is another way of do easily the things, right? Before coming the tool, what you have to do, you should learn the basics. You should learn how automations works, right? That's why people whoever into production support, whoever into development and both production support ideas and development, they actually easily and more and quickly actually grasp into the DevOps and learn all the tools because they have already ideas and of writing scripts, writing automations and all. So not all the solutions you can find in a tool. That's the DevOps actually why people see. For DevOps we have different, for different purposes we have different tools. For different purposes we have different tools. For CI/CD we have tools. For containerizations we have tools. For everything we have tools, right? But whatever the purposes that doing the multiple tools, same things you can achieve using the shell script, writing the shell scripting. If you're mastering writing the shell script, whatever the manual things you are doing every day-to-day life in your company, you can put together, and what you can do, you can simply execute the script and it will be done for you, right? You don't have to use the tools. That's okay. So this okay, let me show you the, I think most of you guys, you are familiar with the shell scripting, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The same things you have to just put all the together in a file. Whatever the script I just wrote in the user data section, just copy paste and create a file, shell script file, and that file you need to execute all the time. As this server, in this server, as we are just creating every time newly, so that script will also go once we terminate the server, right? Okay, that's all. Our Kubernetes is up now. Let's see, kubectl, git, nodes. Okay, we have one node of it. So kubectl working, everything is fine. Now let's understand more on Kubernetes side. We'll discuss. So we have already covered the labels and all, right? Let's focus on the advanced sections we'll talk about today. Is called rolling updates. Guys, this is actually very important to understand what is the rolling updates and why do we need this rolling update. So what is this rolling updates and rollbacks in deployments? So when we first create a deployment, it triggers a rollout. A new rollout creates a new deployment revision. So rollout means if you're going to create a new deployment in normal scenario, if we talk about normal application you're deploying in your company production server, obviously whenever you deploy, the previous version will go and new version will be rolled out, right? So it will create a new rollout. Whatever previous version, it will go and new version will come. So what is this rolling update? So what says user expect applications to be available all the time and developers are expected to deploy new versions of them several times a day. So if you guys would have seen, right, Facebook, Amazon site, right, e-commerce sites, Flipkart, and all, there are many more sites, Netflix. Have you ever seen a big gap or downtime? Never, right? And they always keep updating their features to the customers. How they do that? They use this kind of rolling updates because they want the things to be deployed very quickly without any user impacts, right? So users expect applications to be available all the time. Means we want the applications, the users want the applications to be up all the times. And developers are expected to deploy new versions of the several times a day. If there is a new release, a new features, obviously we keep changing. If you have an applications which is being used in the worldwide is being used, think about that, how frequently you will be updating your applications, patches, securities, features, any changes, functionality, everything you need to change it 1 or 2 days in 1 or 2 days, right? So in Kubernetes, this is done with the rolling updates. Whatever deployment we do in our traditionally, whatever we have done in before, what do we do traditionally? We just deploy it using any tool or things. Now in a Kubernetes, it's being done with the rolling update that is being taken care by the Kubernetes itself. You have to just write the manifesto file, configuration file. So rolling updates allow deployments update to take place with zero downtime by incrementally updating pods instances with new one. The new pods will be scheduled on nodes with available resources. So whenever we create this rolling updates, what it will do, it will never down the entire applications at one go. What it will do, it will Suppose we have 5 instances are running, right? 5 instances, 5 pods are there. So what will do? It will first terminate one pod and deploy another pod in that place, and then it will create terminate another pod and deploy new pod in that place. So what will happen? These 5 pods always will be there. One will be terminated, another will be created. So you here in this case, what will happen? Your applications will be always up and running. If you don't use rolling update, what will happen? You have to terminate all the 5 pods and then deploy new 5 pods again. So those time gap, you'll get a downtime, right? So rolling update, what it does, it just creates. I'll show you in a picture in the next slide. Don't worry. So you'll understand more on that. Okay. So to update the image of the applications to version 2, we have to use the set image command. So here we have just given here kubectl set image, and you have to just use that one to use that particular version 2. So if you see this particular diagram here, the deployment strategy, we have this recreate, which is the traditionally normally we do if you're not using Kubernetes. What happened here? As I said, if we have 5 applications, you have to down all the 5 applications, and in that place you have to create new 5 applications with a new version. But if you see in case of this rolling update, what happens here? It first down one applications and create another applications with version 1.71. Here you can see 1.7.0 is making down and creating another one in that place, 1.7.1. In that case, it will just go ahead and go do one after another. So you'll see here, you will have no downtime because there will be at least one pod will be there to serve the customer, right? That's the deployment strategy, and that's the most popular. That's why the Kubernetes is most popular, and most of the big companies, right, they're using this Kubernetes. That's why high demand in the market. Okay. Now, okay. Anyway, I just explained you in this image. Same thing I've written it here. Okay. What is the recreate and rolling update? Let's see now what is upgrade. What is upgrade? When we upgrade our application, the Kubernetes deployment object creates new replica set under the node and start deploying the replica sets, and same time taking the pod in the old replica set following a rolling update strategy. So upgrade and rolling update are two different things. So you are upgrading your applications and deploying the new versions totally different, right? So when we are upgrading the applications, the Kubernetes follow the rolling update strategy. It follows the rolling update strategy. Okay. So what is the rolling update? It will just down one and create another in that place, right? So that is the upgrade version. Other one will be the rollback. That's also most important, guys. Whenever we do the deployment, rollback is the most important. I would say the foremost important, or the first thing before deployment. The first thing what we have to create a rollback plan. Before deployment plan, we have to create a rollback plan. What is that? Why we need rollback plan?
Because sometimes in production, if anything happens, means we have to get roll back to the older version. Like,
exactly. So we have to always ready with a plan in case of any disaster happened during the deployment. In case of any issues happened, could be human error, could be system error, anything, right? You should have a rollback plan ready so that you can immediately roll back to the previous version. So you'll get minimum impact to your applications, right? If you not have the rollback plan ready, whatever deployment you have done, everything will go. So the traditional deployment or the deployment what we have done so far or still doing, what we do, there are various different tools are doing the deployments like Ansible, right? Even Jenkins also being used for the continuous deployment. Ansible is being used for continuous deployment, right? So those tools are being used deployment, and it has obviously has the rollbacks easily can be done by using the selecting the previous version channel. But manually, if you're deploying something, if you're working on a huge application side, with the applications with the binary, you would have lots of other files, dependencies. That also has to be copied, and few files has to be deleted from here, there, create new things, right? Lots of things you have done in your deployment plan. If you don't have the rollback plan, then you have to again wait for some lots of time to follow the deployment plan, and whatever steps you have done, you have to reverse those things, right? That will take more time. But in Kubernetes, what happens? If you realize that if you have done something wrong, right, you can just simply use the rollback. What will happen? You don't have to do anything. Just use the rollback. What you have to use the kubectl rollout. Kubectl rollout undo. This is the command. Just remember kubectl rollout undo and just a deployment. It will roll back everything. That is not much, right, to know. Just this command you have to use. Once you upgrade, if you feel anything wrong, you have to do that. You need the previous versions, just use this command. And the deployment, what it will do, deployment will destroy the new pod in the new replica sets and bring the older one up in the old replica sets. Quickly, right? That's why Kubernetes is more popular. Now, these are the few commands I'll just give you, don't worry, for that, for creating a deployment, for set image, right, for updating, and for the rollout and rollback, you can just use these commands. I'll give you, don't worry. Now let's see about the restart policy. What is this restart policy and why do we need this? Normally what happens, if you we have already seen in our replicas deployment, right? We deleted one pod and automatically recreated, restarted, right? That automatically Kubernetes do that one. Kubernetes does that one automatically. But why should we add this restart policy? Sometimes what happens, you have to control the Kubernetes, right? If Kubernetes will control you, then nothing can be done because whatever things you want, you cannot achieve it. Whatever Kubernetes give you, you have to follow that one. So here Kubernetes, it gives us to add your restart policy. How do you want the pod to be restarted? Then the default nature of the Kubernetes, it will restart the pod if it is terminated. If it is killed, it will restart the pods, right? But how you want this to be restarted, right? Whether you want to be restarted always, that means the pod will get restarted always if it is terminated or failed or anything. Or if you want to not to start, you have to give never. It will not start the pod. When you should go for never? If you feel, see, for stateful application, stateful set deployment, right? For stateful sets, what happens? If your database pod is down, you should not immediately make it off. It will impact the data inside the database, right? That's why you have to first troubleshoot the issues and find if there is any data mismatch, new data has been added or lost. You have to fix everything and recreate the pod, right? That time you have to select never. And on failure, if you feel on failure, if it is failed, let's start it. If you terminate it, it will not start it, right? So those are the policies. Simply you have to add one statement here, restart policy. By default, it restarts always, right? By default, it restarts always. So in the definition file or in the manifest file, you have to add this statement, restart policy always. Okay. So here it is, the services. That's most important, guys. Let me finish the services today. Maybe tomorrow we'll do the complete demo. So I was waiting the services to complete, then we'll do the things. What is the services? So far, we have learned all these things, right? The object, but we have never connected. We created the pod. We went in the backend. We can go inside to the pod, but we have never accessed it, right? So by using the services, we can communicate with the pod. So what is services? Kubernetes services enable communications with various components within and outside of the applications. It helps us connect applications together with other applications or users. It provides loose coupling between microservices in our applications. So the loose coupling are tightly coupled. What is this loose coupling? So when we talk about the microservices, so in monolithic applications, what happens? All these things are tightly coupled. If anything is breaks, all your applications down. But this loose coupling means one thing is break, other things will manage, right? Your microservices, your entire applications will not impact. Now, what happens here? We have different types of services. We have NodePort, ClusterIP, and LoadBalancer. Okay, we have NodePort, ClusterIP, and LoadBalancer. These are three types of services. These are the three types of services. Let's understand in details and more what is a NodePort. Okay, when should I go for NodePort? When should I go for LoadBalancer? Okay, so the first let's go with the ClusterIP. So a ClusterIP service is the default Kubernetes services, right? So if I just go to this here, to the cluster, if I just use kubectl, okay, kubectl, just type services, right? Kubectl services. Sorry, what is the command, guys?
kubectl get SBC.
Exactly, get services or SBC. That is a short form. See, the default is the ClusterIP services. So if the services is actually, if you're feeling that's long, so you can use a short form SBC. As I was telling in our last class, there are a few short forms you can use it. Now, if I just go here and check, let's see more details. What is this ClusterIP? ClusterIP service is the default Kubernetes service. By default, once Kubernetes you install, it will create the ClusterIP. It gives you a service inside your cluster that other apps inside your cluster can access. There is no external access. So it is between the applications inside the clusters, the pods, whatever the pods is having, the communications between those, it will need the ClusterIP. You don't have to set up it, right? If you want to create a cluster IP separately, you can just go ahead and this is the manifesto file, or this is the configuration, the definitions file. You have to write API version v1 kind service, metadata snap sections, and the type we have to just select as cluster IP, what type of things you want. So that's how you have to create it. So we can access the cluster IP service from the internet by using the Kubernetes proxy. So mostly we don't use this cluster IP service. So if you want to use from the internet, as it is internal, it cannot be accessed through the externally from the outside. But still, if you want to access, you can use the proxy to access this one. If you see this diagram here, right, we have this Kubernetes cluster services, and these are the pods. And this service is nothing but your cluster IP. Through proxy, you can connect it. Okay, so what is the NodePort? So more details we have how we can do when we use this cluster IP. There are a few scenarios like debugging your services or connecting to them directly from your laptop from some reason. If you're debugging something, if you're troubleshooting something, you need to directly connect to those applications. So you can go ahead with the cluster IP and just connect. So allowing internal traffic, displaying internal dashboards, etc. Why you need this? Because this method requires you to run kubectl as an authenticated user. You should not use this to expose your service to the internet. Normally, we never expose the internal things to the internet, right? Good. So that's the cluster IP. Rarely use for troubleshooting part, but mostly no. The other one is the NodePort, right? What is this NodePort service? A NodePort service is the most primitive way to go get external traffic. Most primitive way to get external traffic directly to your service. And NodePort, as the name implies, it opens a specific port on all nodes or the virtual machines or whatever, and any traffic that is sent to this port is forwarded to the service. If you see here, the manifesto file or the definition file, I'll just tell you later. But just now, when we do the demo, right, we have to create the services. I'll explain that time more. But just have a note, kind is service, type is NodePort. That time, the cluster IP, the type was cluster IP. And here the type was NodePort. Okay. Now, the diagram, if you see here, we have the Kubernetes cluster, right? We have this Kubernetes cluster. Now, we need to access this service, access these pods. We have to access these pods from these VMs. How we'll do that? We have to expose the internal or clustered pod, Kubernetes, the pod, to the external traffic. To the external traffic, we have to just expose those things. To expose that. So this type in NodePort. Okay, so you have to, what you have to do, a target port, target port, and NodePort is 30036. NodePort is 30036. So why we have to give 30036? So there is a range of the port you have to select. I'll tell you the range up to from, I think from 30, yeah, from 300 to 32. Okay, I'll just explain you. So what happens here? You have to give a port. Through this port, we can access the pod from externally in the internet. Okay, from the internet, you can access internally, externally all the ports. Now, when we should use this? So when you can only have one service per port, because for each service you create, you will have multiple pods, right? You have to create multiple ports. That is actually downsides. Means it says there are many downsides to this pod method. If you're going for development, or you're doing demo, your demonstration something, you're doing R&D, or you need to do the setup, so you can go with NodePort. You have to create few ports and select it and do the testings and do the development and all this. But when you go to the productions, NodePort is not the ideal choice. NodePort is not the ideal choice, right? So you can only have one service per port, and you can only use ports between the range 30,000 to 32,767. The port range should be in between. So you can create 2,767 ports only. If you have beyond this, you cannot create the services. If your node or VM IP address change, you need to deal with that. Obviously, if the IP address changes, you have to fix it. We have to change the services, ports, and everything. Then you have process. So what it says, it is not recommended to use this method in production, whatever I just told you, right? So it is not the ideal solutions or ideal service to use in the production. If you are running a service that does not have to be always available, if you are running a service that does not have to be always available, or you are very cost sensitive, this method will work for you, right? That's why, see, load balancer, Ingress, and those are actually costly. You have to pay something. That's why in development, R&D, and all this kind of testing and all, we normally use NodePort, right? So as I said, for demo applications or something temporarily or something you're doing development, you can go with this NodePort. Okay. The other one is the load balancer. Other one is the load balancer. So why we need this load balancer? A load balancer service is the standard way to expose a service to the internet. It is a standard way to expose the service to the internet. So what happens here? On JKE, GKE means Google Kubernetes engine. As this Kubernetes is developed and designed by Google, right? Designed by Google. So it uses JKE, Google Kubernetes engine. This will spin up a network load balancer that will give you a single IP address, and that will forward all traffic to you. So if you are using GKE, Google Kubernetes engine, or Google products, right, our cloud, right, that times you have to, whatever network load balancer will get created. If you are using GCP, right, Google Cloud provider, you have to use GKE Kubernetes services. See, Kubernetes, you are learning Kubernetes, the raw things, right? There are in the market, there are many service providers, even cloud service providers. They provide managed service applications. Those applications which already being defined, redefined, all these Kubernetes things are there. So you have to use few commands and everything will be done. Like AWS is EKS, right? Elastic Kubernetes Service. And here Google Kubernetes. And Azure also we have AKS, AKE or AKS. Like that, many cloud service providers, many companies, they provide. So load balancer, when should you use it? If you want to directly expose a service This is the default method in production. All traffic on your port you specify will be forwarded to the service. There is no filtering, no routing, nothing. So you have to use the traffic using the HTTP, TCP, whatever it is. It has also a big downside of a load balancer. What is that? Each service you expose with load balancer will get its own IP address. Its own IP address, which is costly. And you have to pay for a load balancer for exposed service, which can get expensive. In Kubernetes, to overcome this problem, we have Ingress. We have Ingress. So what is this Ingress? Actually, companies were implementing Kubernetes in their process and their organizations. They use definitely Ingress. So you get definitely questions. So what you're using? Suppose if you're using for a multi-tier company, so you can tell easily Ingress. But if you're working for a small scale company or some companies who cannot afford lots of things, you can go with, you can say, we have a few pods are running, or you can go with NodePort. You can say even NodePort we are using, but our company will not afford that much, right? Load balancer, as it is expensive. Your company, if you're not earning that much, how they'll afford this load balancer, right? So load balancer, most of the company, they use it as it is expensive. They go with this Ingress. Ingress also uses the load balancer. But as we said, load balancer for each services, it will create the IP, new IP addresses if you're going with only load balancer. But using Ingress, load balancer will control that, sorry, Ingress will control the IP creations and everything will be managed in Ingress. So it will minimize your cost. So what is that? Ingress is actually not a type of service. Remember, that's why initially I showed you only 3 types of services: NodePort, ClusterIP, and load balancer. Ingress is not a service, remember guys. It is actually not a type of service. Instead, it sits in front of multiple services and act as a traffic police, okay? Act as a traffic controller or smart router, you can say. The router just routes the traffic, right? Router routes the signal to different paths. As the traffic police, what it does, same thing, it will be sitting ideally and transfer the traffic to the different part. So what it says, you can do a lot of different things with an Ingress, and there are many types of Ingress controllers that have different capabilities. The default JK Ingress controller will spin up HTTPS load balancer for you. This will let you do both path-based and subdomain-based routing to backend service. Here is the point. Now, when you go with load balancer alone, what happens? For each service it exposes, it creates the IP addresses, which is expensive. But if you keep Ingress in front of that, is sitting one router there, what it does, it is not, you don't have to unnecessarily create the IP address. What it does, it can redirect the traffic using the path-based and subdomain-based. If you're purchasing a domain, you have to pay for that, right? Subdomain, no, you can create based on the subdomains, maybe multiple or n number of subdomains based on the service provider you're choosing. So path-based, for example, you can send everything. See, I have suppose a subdomain called book.ranjitswain. I have suppose ranjitswain.com is my domain, where I have created a subdomain for book.ranjitswain.com for suppose only I'm a retailer, e-commerce retailer. I'm suppose selling only books. I can create a book.ranjitswain, or I'm selling clothes, or I'm selling whatever goods, right? Provide that name with the subdomain and use that one. So what happened of this service, and everything under this particular path will be redirected to this one. Let's see this in example in the diagram. If you see here, this particular diagram, right? If you see this particular diagram, what happened here? We have different things, services are there. We have suppose one domain here, another domain, okay, and all the services. I have suppose cloth business here, book business or food business, whatever it is. I can just all this service I just exposed, add those particular domains. Using this traffic in this controller, it will automatically, whatever applications you choose, it will just redirect those traffics. Redirect those traffic. So here you can see the extensions, how to use. So if you see here, we have this API version, extensions, V1, beta 1, kind, ingress, right? And here, the services host you have to provide, and the path, which path you have to provide to go. We'll see in details, but ingress, it will be, as I said, load balancer ingress, we cannot do the demo. It will charge you more, okay, if you create it. So just go ahead and just do whatever the ingress things we have learned so far. Just do practice, not practice, just go through and make all these things. If you can do practice, you can do that. Just go with more in details in advanced, okay? You can find all the details there. Okay, guys, that's all for today's class. I think we have completed most of the advanced things, and maybe tomorrow, next class, we'll go with further advanced sections of storage, how we do the volumes, persistent volume and all. That is most important with all this. Once we complete this persistent volume, we'll have them make one project, end-to-end project that we'll do in details. Okay, so tomorrow class, we'll do one small demo with having NodePort to see how we can access those things, and then we can go with that. Okay, guys, that's all. If you have any doubt, we can discuss, or else we can wind up this call and connect tomorrow.